thirst is not an indicator
of hydration.
Dehydration, because you know as well as I do, hey, I'm thirsty, glug, glug, I'll drink 2 drinks of water, and I'm not thirsty. I'm not hydrated, but I'm not thirsty. So what happens when people get low on water, remember I said that survival is mostly psychology.
Yes.
Well, dehydration affects your physiology, obviously, big time. We've already talked about that. But your psychological attitude goes down the crapper as well. So it's a really horrible dance between the psychological and physiological aspect of dehydration that kills so many people. You know, the military found something called, a fact called involuntary dehydration. And what they found in their soldiers out in the field, men and women, is if they were on a training exercise, even if they had a lot of water there in the water buffalo, usually a little trailer they have out there with water, unless they were being told/forced to drink water, they were not drinking the water they needed in hot temperatures to stay hydrated, unless someone was forcing them/telling them to do it. It was only when they went back to the barracks and had the pizza that they drank the water their body needed. So what that means to the average day hiker, if you come to my country and you're from Connecticut and you start hiking in the high desert and you're not hip to the fact that your body's dehydrated at a higher rate and no one's telling you to drink water and you're not paying attention to the color of your urine, which should be clear, lay off the B vitamins for a while because they'll color urine, you might be in for a world of hurt. Because when you go down with dehydration, it's this sinister creep-up type thing that happens, and all of a sudden the bad judgments come, and all of a sudden the bad judgments create the potential ultimate survival scenario.
Are you familiar with Dr. Batman G., who did a 30-year study on water?
No, I'm not.
He passed on a few years back, but he did this study on water, and he said that a huge part of humanity's illnesses come from dehydration, that by the time you're a certain age, your ability to sense whether you're dehydrated is heavily muted. And what you said, which is that most people, by the time they're thirsty, they're heavily dehydrated. They're not just a little dehydrated, they're heavily dehydrated. He said that most people need to know that whatever is your body weight, divide that by 2, and that's the number of liquid ounces of water you need daily just to stay hydrated. This doesn't even include extreme type exercise or hiking or other types of survival requirements.
Right. Well, I'll do something easier. I've already said it. You know, your math skills are going to be screwed up when you're dehydrated anyway. But, you know, look at the color of your pee. Don't take the multivitamins for a few days. Certain medications will color urine as well. And drink until your urine is clear. And I just had 4 days with 7 sustainable design architecture students working on my homestead as part of a class, which just ended yesterday, last night. And it's 90-plus degrees out. It was 94 yesterday. And we're working outside doing concrete work, of all things. And none of us could really get our urine to a clear state. It was work just to keep it like most people's is, a light yellow. So if people are real serious about hydrating the body, that's the easiest way to tell, the gross motor method way to tell. And you could catalog how much water you drank to get to that clarity of urine state. The issue I have with the latter, or with the former that you mentioned, is body weight doesn't take into account at all being pregnant or sick or last oral intake of food or ambient outdoor air temperature or convective wind speeds or exercise or all this stuff, all this variables that happens when people actually live their lives. Life's not a math problem. You know, so if they just look at the color of their pee in relation to the different activities they do, whether it's at the office or mountain biking, that's the dead-on way, you know, to access what your body is really trying to tell you as far as adequate hydration.
That's simple and clear enough. That's great. Talk a little bit about food. I know that many people say take as many bags of rice as you can and can as much as you can for storage of food. What is your rule of thumb for the storage of food? What are you recommending to people in terms of food storage that translates as preparedness and really owning the fact that to be self-reliant, you really need to have a minimum of what? How much food? I know
well, that's the wild card question that I can't answer, and I didn't answer it in the second book because I can't. So how much food Kim Greenhouse needs to store depends upon your cosmology, largely. In other words,
yes.
if I was Mormon, I would store 12 months, right? Because that's what my faith tells me to do. If you're kind of an average person out there, you might store 2 to 4 weeks. If you read the FEMA site, then you might store 3 days worth. Hopefully we all have at least 3 days worth in our homes already. The biggest thing I would say to people about food storage is store food. Because I can tell you what it's like not to have any food. You can come on a course with me, and we'll try to whack a rat with a deadfall trap, and you can eat that rat. And that's great incentive to, even if they, what do they call it, appetite fatigue. I laugh when I hear that from these professionals. Appetite, what the hell is that? You know, there is no appetite fatigue when you're hungry. You will eat whatever is on the plate, including other people. And this has been, I went through a lot of starvation scenarios and really nasty stuff. Just in the past a few thousand years, it's happened with the latest one in North Korea, you know, in the 80s or so, and in China, when there was hundreds of thousands of people dying of starvation, which we didn't really know about until years after the fact because of the nature of how those countries are run. And it's this very sobering thing. You know, we're not talking about the Donner Party. We're not talking about, oh, that happened 300 years ago. We're talking about a couple decades ago. You know, and if you look at the hybridization of seeds and the drought, which is now in its 9th year here in Arizona, and the sketchy aspect of food production, a lack of bioregionalism in food production, and the corporate conglomeration of control regarding food, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or, you know, who gives a damn if it's just beans and rice. Store something, hopefully store something your family likes, and then food storage is a whole different aspect, a can of worms. That's multifaceted. Food's very complex, but it doesn't need to be. If you can go to the discount store and get a 50-pound bag of rice for $20, it's a start. Then make sure you have the water to cook it and a container to cook it and a heat source that's safe when the grid goes down, that you don't kill your family with carbon monoxide or burn down your place.
What do you use? You use a solar oven, right, or something, a solar cooker?
Well, I have a solar oven, you know, because I'm in Arizona. It makes sense. I also have a microwave because I live off the grid on a solar system, so I run my microwave with energy from the sun. I also have propane, a little 2-burner stove, which I use in the house as well to supplement or whatever I need to do. So my big thing, and I'm very good over an open fire. I don't need any containers, and I can cook dinner, depending on what it is. I think a healthy aspect to survival thinking on every aspect is multifaceted. Do not put all of your eggs in one basket. If you're storing food, if you're buying alternative lighting stuff, if you're thinking about a transportation plan or a communication plan with your family, the more you can diversify, the harder it is to destroy.
You talk about survival versus primitive living or living off the land on page 22 of your book, and you make a distinction between survival versus primitive living. Why?
Well, primitive living skills are totally different than the Jeep breaking down. In other words, if Kim went out in a Jeep and you were out just on a simple day hike and your Jeep broke down and got a flat tire or whatever happened enough that you couldn't repair it yourself, you would be dealing with a search and rescue situation. In other words, Kim Greenhouse would have left a game plan with loved ones in town. Hey, I'm going to Mount Hood. I'm going to be there a couple days. And if I don't come back, here's the forest road I'm on, blah, blah, blah. Here's my Jeep, here's the license plate number. So it's a third-party rescue that's imminent, and that's very common, and that's normal in the 21st century. In a primitive living skills situation, there is no rescue. I mean, you're living off the land, for lack of a better term, and you're catching rats with your hair, you know, and you're catching fish with your hands, and you're making bows and arrows, and it has zero application to a modern survival situation. And people get them confused, especially survival schools, especially the media, especially Hollywood, especially magazines, where you have gung-ho editors that have Zippo experience in my profession, and they get those muddied around. So you have a modern survival course, quote-unquote, that's teaching someone to make a bow drill fire from sticks, which is a hardcore, complex, and fine motor skill, which is going to come up with nothing when someone's scared, tired,